Finally, on Mass Effect 3, I'd like to talk about the ending. Before we start though, I should probably lay out my biases. As you know, I don't have much truck with literalism, that is, the dogged insistence that the explicit meaning of the text is the only meaning. Readings that place the Mass Effect setting as a secondary world and emphasise plausibility, consistency and continuity seem largely pointless to me. Mass Effect is, like all fiction, a comment on our real lives and real ideas, not an escapist construct that exists for its own sake. Also, as someone in the thread pointed out long ago, I'm most excited by concepts that challenge me or show me something new and unusual. I don't consume media to be pandered to. I don't aim to be satisfied by a text. I mean, it's nice in a superficial way, but chances are, if it's something I wanted, then it's something I could have predicted. And do I really need to spend my time being told things that I already know? Finally, in late 2011, my dad passed away. Long illness, he'd been unwell for years at that point. Later, in March 2012, shortly after the release of Mass Effect 3 in fact, somebody at the place where I worked at the time also died. This one was sudden, a heart attack, and I was one of the first responders. So that and the rest of what I just said might explain why I don't have a lot of patience for some of the criticism of Mass Effect 3. More generally, fans who get upset over dying characters and bad things happening in stories. Everyone who complains about not having a happy ending or being unsatisfied or unsympathetic characters. It's like, get over it, man. There are worse things than Commander Shepard never returning home. And let's remember, it got pretty bad. Facebook campaigns, alternative fan endings, even our own goons on the forums had conniptions over the ending, and you can't say I'm cherry-picking there. Just read the first few pages of the archived Mass Effect 3 spoiler thread. Even posters I like and respect got a bit hysterical. Obviously though, if I'm honest, there are many problems with the ending of Mass Effect 3, and that's both versions, both the original and the extended cut. I'm only going to show the extended cut because the original version is largely the same, there's just less of it. We'll talk all about that a little later. But for now, for the most part, I think you can divide much of the criticism of Mass Effect 3 into two kinds. The first kind is conceptual. Criticisms that attack the general direction of the ending, what happens in the ending. The second kind is technical. Criticisms that attack the specific execution of the ending, how the ending is conveyed to us. Now, as a rule, I tend to agree with the technical criticisms more, but have very little sympathy for the conceptual ones. Alright, so, we're here in the Resistance base camp in London. This is our last chance to talk to all our squad members, plus some of the major characters from across the series. Now, for the most part, this section was well received. The fan base are pretty consistent in liking everything to do with squad mates and friendships and dialogue and whatnot. And it is good. It is good. I think, though, the editing of the cutscenes seems a little off. Maybe it's just me, but it feels like maybe the transitions are a little rough. Some of the conversations just end a bit abruptly, it's not a major thing, but it is a technical issue that kind of sums up the sequence as a whole, just lacking that bit of polish that smooths out the rough bits. Kind of appropriate, really. What's interesting is that, according to Patrick Weeks, this sequence almost didn't make it in. He had to argue for its inclusion, for one last chance for the player to talk to the characters in the game. Again, I can't confirm whether this is true, or even the real Patrick Weeks talking, but it sounds plausible. And it's a good thing he stood his ground, too, because the game desperately needs this moment. It's like final bows in a theatrical production. It's useful, helpful for an audience to have that final moment with the characters and the subplots they represent. It's a chance to see those characters at the end of their arcs, to see where the story has left them, how they go forward into the future, even if the story has left them broken and messed up, or the future is uncertain and unclear. There's a whole etiquette to this as well. Bit parts before major parts, minor details before important relationships. Probably why our earlier conversations are with new characters like James, or minor characters like the Suicide Mission team. And our later conversations are with Liara, our longtime friend and goddess figure, and Edie, a new character but one who represents the core conflict of the series. The turret sequence is one of the worst moments in the game. It's entirely pointless and breaks up what should be a thoughtful, emotional section of the story. It's another example of BioWare sabotaging their own writing by trying to be two things at once. They don't have confidence in their own level, so they throw in a gratuitous shooting gallery. It's a shame, it really is. In fairness, it's not quite as bad as what we had in the last video, where in the line readings, Steve Cortez got shot down, and Shepard naturally gets upset and screams his name. When Steve radios in to confirm he survived, Shepard just gives the most lifeless line reading possible.
You sure?
It's hilariously awful. Probably the result of being a last-minute addition to the ending, again at Patrick Week's insistence. Cortez was originally intended to die in a shuttle crash, but now survives if you complete his dead husband subplot.
Commander?
But these are the kinds of criticisms that I get about Mass Effect 3. Little technical issues or design decisions that are bad and make the game worse, but aren't really any worse than any other of BioWare's other hiccups. Like, I can't really say any of these are worse than coding Morinth as a predatory lesbian, or running terrible catchphrases into the ground, or Jessica Chobert's ill-considered appearance as Diana Aller's future journalist. Technically, even fan favourites like Garrus's calibrations, before BioWare got a hold of it, or the Turian councillor's Reaper's finger quotes, or even Marauder Shields are writing missteps. It's just we liked those ones because they used to be funny. So I don't see these particular failures as being especially egregious. I mean, they're still bad, but that's business as usual for BioWare. They never could bat perfect scores. Anyway though, I should probably get all of these out of the way. The ending cutscenes are not particularly interesting or inspired. The extended cut DLC pads these out a bit and adds variation, but the original versions of the cutscenes were poor. They were short and almost identical, scene for scene, the main difference being the colour of the Crucible's energy rays, red, blue or green. One of the endings, the Synthesis ending, tried to represent the merging of organic and synthetic life by giving everyone glowy green eyes and laying a green circuit board texture over everything. I'll talk about this more later, but it looks really silly and very lazy. The circuit boards are on everything, suggesting even people's clothes now possess some kind of artificial intelligence. Also, the after-credits stinger is a sequence from thousands of years in the future, in which an old man recounts the story of Commander Shepard, our story, to a young child. The old man is voiced by Buzz Aldrin, which is obviously a lovely idea, and I have an insane amount of respect for the man, but it just doesn't work. He's not an actor. The line readings just aren't right. And finally, after the ending sequence, we're dumped back to the Normandy pre-final mission with a curt text message saying the story continues with downloadable content. An advert, essentially, which always jars. So those are the main criticisms of the ending from a technical perspective, at least the ones I agree with.
The next few hours will decide the fate of everyone in the galaxy. Every mother, every son, every unborn child.
These, then, are the criticisms that I don't agree with. Number one is that the ending isn't open enough. For some reason, some fans expected that the game's ending sequence, or even the game as a whole, would differ dramatically based on all your choices over the course of the series. I think this massively underestimates how much work would be involved in making all those possible paths, and all for a game that would, be only seen if people played through the entire series start to finish making different decisions? It's a very naive view, and I can only assume these people took EA's marketing division at their word, which is never a good idea. However, in fairness, sometimes this criticism is rephrased as you determine the fate of the setting in a freeway decision 5 minutes before the end, when it should have been determined by decisions made throughout the game, which is a lot more reasonable. I think, though, BioWare wanted to avoid locking players into particular endings so early on, especially when the link between mid-game decision and final ending sequence could potentially be unclear until after the fact. People had enough problems with the suicide mission in Mass Effect 2, and that was straightforward with immediate consequences. Also, to be honest, it's bad enough replaying the entire final section to see the other endings as it is, let alone the whole game. This criticism is closely related to another, that because the decisions made throughout the game don't determine the ending, they're pointless. It doesn't matter whether you save the Krogan or trick them, save the Geth or destroy them, who survives the suicide mission, anything. These choices are without consequence, because everyone ends up in the same place anyway. You get the same confrontation on the Citadel, you get the same decision with the Crucible. I don't think this is true though. Firstly, the consequences for these choices are shown. In fact, the entire game is an extended ending for the setting as a whole. The consequence for saving the Krogan on Tuchanka is that the Krogan are saved, and you get a scene with Rex, Eve or Reeve explaining what this means for them and the Krogan and what their plans are for the future. The consequence for getting the Geth and the Quarians to make peace is that they make peace, and you get a scene of the Geth Prime inviting Admiral Raan to join it in rebuilding Rannoch. These consequences are referenced again later in the game when the fleets show up to retake Earth, when you see the war leaders in London. There may not be a series of Fallout-style epilogue slides that reiterate all the choices you've made in the game, but to be honest, I think that's a good thing. Fallout-style epilogue slides are dreary, tedious affairs that exist so that writers don't have to create an actual ending that summarises the themes and ideas of the game. We already know what choices we made during the game because we just played that game. And even the choices that people don't really remember, the choices that aren't choices, who survived the suicide mission, whether you sold Legion to Cerberus in Mass Effect 2, have their consequences. I've already shown how Mordin and Legion's absence can affect the plot for better or worse. Jack can show up in Cerberus headquarters as an enemy if you don't complete the Academy side mission, as can Legion if you sold it to Cerberus. There are consequences for these choices, little details. Maybe not game changers, true, but of a reasonable scope for a very linear, cinematic game with high production values. Sometimes the war assets are used as an example for making the ending more involved. The idea is that Shepard should have to deploy particular war assets, the Krogan Aralak Company for example, to specific tasks in the final push. Again, assaulting a Reaper firebase for example, much like the suicide mission in Mass Effect 2. That the game doesn't do this is a flaw, a waste of the story. Personally, it seems unfair to me to criticise a game for something that it isn't trying to do. Nobody said that there'd be an in-depth strategic minigame at the end, so we can't fault BioWare when it isn't there. Also, I think this is one of those ideas that sounds really cool and fun in our heads, but would be lacking in implementation. The number of war assets would have to be reduced a lot to make it manageable, and some of them wouldn't really translate to any situation on Earth or in Earth orbit. The specific war assets available would be largely consistent across playthroughs as well. You're always going to have Turians on side, always the Alliance, always some Krogan. The main variation would be Geth or Quarians, since those are the only two potentially exclusive assets. It's also worth remembering that while the suicide mission was absolutely amazing in terms of music and visuals and atmosphere, the actual decision making was actually quite boring. Once you work out which options are acceptable for each task, the suicide mission becomes a puzzle, one with obvious solutions. I don't think a detailed war asset subsystem would necessarily improve the ending sequence. In fact, I think it would bring the pacing to a standstill and drag the game down just when it needs to be rushing towards a finish. Another area of criticism revolves around the dreaded phrase, happy ending. Bit contentious this one, partly I think because it's a loaded term. People like myself, and I'll freely admit this, use it with derision to dismiss audience complaints about what happens to the setting in the ending. Oh, you just want a happy ending, that sort of thing. The implication being that the person complaining is being a bit childish or precious about fictional characters dying and whatnot. The thing is, it only works because so many fans tie themselves in knots over the term. They'll suggest a happy ending, but only as a possibility, one of many endings. Or cravenly whine about how it's not about having a happy ending, we don't want a happy ending, but while we're here complaining, actually, why don't we have a happy ending anyway? The problem is that these people aren't really paying attention to the story. Their criticism is in bad faith. It's more about what they want than what the story demands. The usual line of reasoning is that the existing ending doesn't match the themes or the tone of the game. These people suggest that Mass Effect is a game about doing the impossible, and therefore the end of the series should involve Commander Shepard doing the impossible one last time, like defeating the Reapers in a straight-up battle once and for all, just like the suicide mission or killing Sovereign in the previous games. I think this is very silly. Doing the impossible is not a theme, it's a conceit of the genre and the medium. I don't think anyone would be interested in a hero who merely does the plausible or the probable, let alone playing one in the game. Shepard does the impossible because they're a heroic figure, i.e. they transcend normal boundaries and limitations. They die, they come back, they mingle with humans and aliens alike, they fight and win every time because they're a protagonist, not setting drapery. It's akin to saying shooting is one of the themes of Mass Effect because that's what Shepard does throughout the series. Furthermore though, I think it's disingenuous to suggest that Shepard can always do the impossible, like they never fail or suffer setbacks. There are many times in this series where Shepard is forced into a dilemma, like on Vermeer, or suffers a loss outright, the various Collector skirmishes, Thane's death, Morden's death, Legion's death, and those are just the unavoidable ones. Shepard wins or loses by various degrees, depending on what best serves the purpose of the story at the time. It's cherry-picking to select only moments when Shepard triumphs against the odds and use those to justify a different ending. A similar argument is that the tone of Mass Effect is upbeat and therefore requires a triumphant ending. Usually it's accompanied by claims that Mass Effect is pulp, when in fact that's one of the sci-fi subgenres Mass Effect doesn't draw upon. Flash Gordon, not an influence. Again though, Mass Effect hits emotional beats both high and low across the series. Mass Effect 3 may be more introspective and moodier than 1 and 2, but that's because those games reserve their philosophical ponderings and ethical dilemmas for other alien characters. Mass Effect 3 just brings it home for Shepard and the player. That isn't somehow invalid because it suggests answers that are difficult or uncomfortable for the audience. Patrick Weeks expresses yet another argument much like the above in his comment on the ending. He suggests that the themes of Mass Effect are friendship, galactic alliances, and organics versus synthetics. Some people, maybe including Weeks, maybe not, Take that argument to suggest that Shepard uniting the galaxy should be enough to fully defeat the Reapers. I mean, that would be the perfect capstone to such a theme, right? This cycle is special because the Council forms an oligarchy of 4 races rather than just one. Friendship defeats evil robot gods. What more could you ask? I don't like Week's interpretation myself. I think friendship and galactic alliances are the same theme listed twice, because that's what he likes. And I think he doesn't give enough weight to organics versus synthetics, which can be more accurately described as intergenerational conflict, or to the larger theme of death and transience. Both of those have far more to do with the Reapers, the various partner sub-conflicts, and what those all represent than friendship, which is really kind of irrelevant. Friendship is more to do with Shepard and how they act and what gives them their strength, ideals, etc. And it's fairly standard stuff, part of the woolly liberal democratic tradition of modern pop culture. It's not actually an answer or solution to the crisis the Reapers represent, the tyranny of death and the evils it inspires. After all, we've already discussed how the Council is responsible for perpetrating its own cruelties and injustices. It's not actually any better than the Prothean Empire or Inner Salem Workers Collective or what have you. And if you think about it, all you need is friendship is really a trite and overused concept anyway. No, the question the series posits, why do we die, can we ever be free of that, demands something more. When the series suggests that it's inbuilt to our very existence, Vendetta's pattern, Sovereign's trap, Jarvik's box, the madness of Cronus, then the answer must be revolutionary in nature. We have to alter the fabric of our existence, socially, culturally, philosophically, literally, to defeat death. Friendship doesn't cut it. I don't like to be more specific than revolutionary, because the game isn't detailed enough to say if it is Marxist, Leninist, Third World Maoist or whatever, but it is a divergence from the aforementioned liberal democratic paradigm, which is largely quite conservative ever since its rise to dominance in the 20th century. Many of the remaining criticisms are more technical, though I still disagree with them. People seem to become weirdly literal all of a sudden when it comes to things like scene changes and off-screen action. So, for example, they'll complain that in one scene, Shepard and their squad mates are charging the conduit, then Shepard gets hurt and blacks out, and when they awake, the squad mates are gone, to reappear later on the Normandy in the final moments of the game. Now, to me, that makes sense. That's not difficult at all. Shepard goes down, the squad mates get separated in the battle, they pull back to the Normandy and they get stuck on board when the ship pulls out after the Crucible activates. It's not explicitly stated, but the implied series of events is obvious. I don't think we need to see every single step in this sequence on screen. I think there's enough information to work this out as is. It's an oddly nitpicky fault to criticise. Similarly, some people suggested that the destruction of the mass relays meant the obliteration of the entire galaxy, based on the events of the Arrival DLC for Mass Effect 2. Any destruction of a mass relay is equivalent to a supernova. Again, you'd have to be tone deaf to say this. Triumphant music, long fought for goal, end of the game, trillions dead. It's a bizarrely dogmatic reading of the scene, simply because the game doesn't explicitly differentiate between spamming an asteroid into a relay and a self-destruct code or whatever it is the Crucible does. There's tons of these so-called plot holes, a problem that isn't really a problem if you remember that stories aren't documentaries. How does Anderson get to the final confrontation? Why does the Normandy leave the battle? What happens to everyone left on Earth? What will Garrus and Tardy eat after the ending? Questions that nobody needed to ask. The answers don't matter, and I don't say this to dismiss the questions outright. I mean that the answers are, it doesn't matter. It's all old setting, which Shepard has destroyed and reformed by the end of the game. I mean, if you want a literal answer, then chances are you already know it. But the people asking these questions are asking in bad faith. They don't like these answers, and use their supposed lack of clarity to slam the game. Like, come on, we all know that all these soldiers and armies and spaceships don't survive the final battle on Earth. They're all gonna die. That's sort of the point. They go up against the Reapers, against death itself, and although they don't survive, they help the hero, Shepard, nonetheless. But I think people reject that, perhaps because they thought the stakes of the game were the lives of everyone I know and like, when in fact the stakes are much higher, namely the concepts of life and death themselves. They don't like that these characters we know and like basically all choose to die for a higher purpose. So these people pretend bemusement and attack the ending for not giving us answers or closure or whatnot. There's something similar at work when it comes to the conversation with the Catalyst at the end of the game. The Catalyst provides us with a brief explanation of its methods, its reasoning and purpose. Some people say it doesn't make sense. Why would someone create the Reapers to protect organic life by genociding it every 50,000 years? They then use this to discredit the entire ending. These people are being deliberately obtuse. The agricultural metaphor is right there in the name. They're called Reapers. The process by which they preserve and memorialize extinct species was the focus of Mass Effect 2. It makes sense, the logic is sound. You're still not supposed to agree with it, because as a hero, Shepard is out to change the nature of life and death. The cost of the Reaper's solution, as we've seen reflected in the conflicts across the game, as well as the Reaper War itself, is too high. That's intentional. Similarly, some people like to claim that the synthesis solution, merging all organic and synthetic life, is a violation of the galaxy's rights. Since nobody asked to be half human, half machine, it would be a kind of rape, their words, to inflict it on the galaxy. Personally, I find this comparison incredibly offensive and very insensitive, so well done, you horrible nerds. It's also a problem that everyone was quite happy to ignore up until the ending. Shepard has never asked anyone for their consent to save them, execute them, cure the genophage, release Arachni, upload Reaper code, not upload Reaper code, etc, etc, and nobody's complained because we all know it's a fiction. It's a disingenuous criticism that people use not because they genuinely believe the conceit of the hero is wrong, but because it's a handy way to complain about something that they didn't like. I mean, if you want to describe all heroic stories as fascist, then fine, you wouldn't be entirely wrong, though I don't think it's a very fruitful line of inquiry. But the Mass Effect 3 ending is a poor place to start.
That all? We knew this was going to be a gamble at best.
Bad odds are better than no chance at all.
If I seem dismissive of a lot of these complaints, it's because I'm skeptical of where these come from. As I've said earlier, I think most of these don't come from genuinely analysing the game and considering what it means, what it's trying to say, what ideas are being conveyed and for what purpose. I think they come from the audience's desire to be satisfied, reassured to be told what they already know. I'm specifically thinking of the reaction to Dragon Age Inquisition. Now, Inquisition was quite a popular game, lots of people liked it and felt it was a return to form after Dragon Age 2 and, for that matter, Mass Effect 3. It was fun, it had good characters, decent gameplay and whatever. Most people also agree the ending is quite poor. The story just sort of peters out around the halfway mark. The final confrontation with the game's villain, the most evil creature in the setting, I mean that literally, he's a cross between every kind of evil shown in the games to date, is almost an afterthought. BioWare obviously ran out of time, but nobody really complains. Compared to the reaction to Mass Effect 3, which prompted loads of discussions, news articles, social media campaigns, and eventually a free DLC apology from BioWare. 2 bad endings, 2 very different reactions. If you're feeling charitable, you could say that people had low expectations of Inquisition, not just because of previous games, but also because it was essentially a standalone story. Players were just happy it was fun. Me though, I suspect Inquisition gets a pass because the ending satisfies audience expectations. Even though it's a complete damp squib lacking in energy or meaning, nobody minds because it's unchallenging and uncomplicated. The bad guy loses, the good guys win, everything goes back to the way it was. The player gets to have a party with all their friends, there's epilogue slides to remind you of all the things you did in the game. Being the Inquisitor is awesome. Never mind that the ending's completely forgettable, an ellipsis on the tail end of what could have been an interesting meditation on faith and religion. Because Inquisition at its core reassures audiences. Everything's fine, nothing's changed, nothing bad happens to the people you really care about. If you try your best, you will succeed. That any sins or failures can be forgiven. Because Mass Effect at its core challenges audiences. Things aren't fine and they need to change. This means bad things will happen to people you care about. Success will only come at great cost. That anything and everything is fair game for the pettiest of criticisms. It's this fundamental disinterest in Mass Effect 3 as an act of communication, as anything other than a vehicle to give audiences what's easiest and most comforting, that spawns such poor analysis of the ending. For that matter, it's also at the heart of many sad attempts to rewrite the ending into something more palatable. Whether it's indoctrination theory, literally the idea that it was all a dream is preferable to characters dying, or the Mass Effect happy ending mod, or a 539-page fan rewrite of the entire game, or, worst of all, BioWare's own extended cut. Alright, so, if so much criticism is actually bad, what would be some good criticism? I think the real problem with the ending, besides technical goofs and glitches and poor line readings, is the timing and pacing. Earlier I talked about the etiquette of last bows. There's an implicit order to how and when actors make their curtain calls based on the structure of the story. Similarly, there's an implicit order to how a story stages its climax and denouement based on its themes, character arcs and subplots. Let's take a look at Mass Effect's ending as is to see how it comments on the rest of the story. The ending begins after the attack on Cerberus HQ. Our first beat is Admiral Hackett gathering the fleets for the final attack. Hackett's an important character, but only in the sense that he makes the plot happen. He organises the fleets, builds the Crucible, gives Shepard objectives, but isn't really relevant thematically or personally, like, say, Anderson is. His final bow, his little speech on the Normandy, a visual quote of the Shepard's reveal in the very first game, and the various fleets reporting in, wraps up the plot of the game, uniting the galaxy to fight the Reapers. From there, we begin our landing mission. As this is the last time we use the Normandy as our vehicle, our Normandy representative character, Joker, makes his final bow with a touchingly formal salute. Joker drops his guard, his normal shield of quips and sarcasm, to connect with Shepard as a colleague and as a loyal follower. The landing itself is our reintroduction to Earth, and the difference between the Earth we see here and the Earth we saw in the prologue is literally night and day. The threat is greater than ever, with Reaper enemies everywhere, and these last few missions are harder than most. The Resistance base camp is, as mentioned, the final bow for all of our squad mates, and also some of the more important characters from the game's various arcs, such as the Primarch, Reeve, etc. The team as a whole gets one too, with Shepard's final inspirational speech. Then we have the final push across No Man's Land. one of the longest and toughest missions in the game. Lots of fighting, lots of enemies, including multiple mini-bosses like brutes and banshees all at once. It all culminates in the final boss fight of the game, the defense of the Thanix missile launcher. Shepard is all alone against hordes of enemies, including one actual Reaper destroyer. It's a refinement of the various one-on-one moments with Reapers we've had across the game, only in this final iteration it's just Shepard and the missiles. No giant thresher worm, no Quarian fleet, one human, one Reaper, one-on-one duel. This moment proves Shepard's physical supremacy over the Reapers, even if it wouldn't be enough to win the war. What's important is that Shepard's status as a hero, and someone who has the moral strength to overcome the Reapers, is fully confirmed in the physical world. Skipping ahead a bit, we have the final run on the Conduit, which ends in disaster when Harbinger pops up. Though of course, since we've just confirmed Shepard is stronger than the Reapers, Harbinger can't actually kill Shepard. Shepard makes it onto the Citadel only to run into Anderson and the elusive man, who kill each other in the confrontation. As Shepard's dual father figures, and representatives of the Paragon-Renegade duality at the heart of the game, their relationship with Shepard is placed higher than the physical confrontation with the Reapers. The game is telling us the order of importance of its various parts, so you have uniting the galaxy, then your friends, then Shepard's physical struggle with the Reapers, then Shepard's personal ethics and the madness of Cronus, then after that, and most important, is the Catalyst. And in the Catalyst sequence, Shepard answers the question at the heart of Mass Effect: what to do about death, and determines the future of the galaxy. That's the most important thing about the game, according to the ending. And that, aside from a brief snippet of the far future, which essentially confirms that everything ends up okay and reframes the series as the stuff of mythology, is that. Now, there's a couple of things at work here. Like I said before, the main thing is the timing and pacing. I rattled through a lot of that quite quickly, but it's a long ending if you count from Admiral Hackett's appearance. Most people probably wouldn't, funnily enough, which probably contributes to the idea that the ending is rushed or lacks impact. I mean, if you count the ending as starting from the Conduit, then the ending would seem short and incomplete. There's a lot of empty space as well, parts of the ending that aren't tying off character arcs or plot beats. The two missions, the landing on Earth and the push across No Man's Land, are long, hard slogs. Lots of combat arenas in a row, lots of enemies to fight, several instances of endurance battles with infinite waves. I mean, it's great, it has its upsides. London is a great environment, dark and covered in rubble, really moody. Feels like the end of the world, it feels like the centre of a galactic war. But it does separate out the parts of the ending that are the ending. Moments that ask you to say goodbye to Hackett or your squad mates or Anderson are buffered by moments that say, hey, the game is still happening, kill Reapers. And it maybe dilutes those moments when you let Hackett bow out of the story, only to drag him back in to commentate on the space battles in the Crucible, or have tender, heartfelt conversations with Shepard's squad mates, only to have them stick around another hour for yet another mission. If these moments were closer together, perhaps if the base camp was cut, and the dialogues there shifted to some kind of forward command post after the Thanix missiles and before the Conduit run. Perhaps if one of the two Earth missions were cut or reduced in size, that might help the ending. It would be clearer, I think, that the game was coming to a close and these final dialogues with the characters were the endings for these characters. There might be less demand for 10 minutes of interminable ending slides in which the game tells you things you already know because we would already have closure from speaking to the characters directly. In that light, BioWare's extended cut becomes sadly ironic. What was intended to improve the ending by directly addressing fan complaints instead exacerbates the ending's main flaws. Perfect example is the run on the Conduit. What was perfectly straightforward now becomes an overlong mess because fans needed to know how Garrison Liara got from Shepard's side to the Normandy. An exciting sequence is interrupted, so the Normandy, which has already bowed out of the story, can fly down, and Shepard and squad mates can have an argument and rehash how much they like each other, which we already saw at the base camp. Another example would be the final cutscenes. The extended cut pads these out quite a bit. Some additions are fine, a few seconds of people cheering on Thessia or Tachanka, okay, fine. Not really necessary, but not egregiously awful either. The Synthesis ending, though, suffers quite a bit, because Synthesis is supposed to be this unimaginable utopian future, completely unlike our current existence in every way, and BioWare can't show that. So we just get more of Joker's sentient hat with circuit boards on it, or a scene with a zombie monster suddenly and horrifically becoming self-aware. We also get slides of all the characters doing what they do after the ending of the game. Again, this is BioWare undermining their own writing. For such a cataclysmic, apocalyptic event that changes the very nature of life and death, as the premise of Mass Effect promises, not a lot actually changes. There's an awful lot of Jack or Jacob or Miranda or Zaid just standing around, doing the same thing as always. The Destroy ending explicitly rolls back the destruction of the mass relays, which is the entire point of that ending choice, and completely abandons the concept of the relays as a Reaper trap, which, remember, is part of the central thesis of the game, that we are trapped into evil by our surroundings. These endings also don't tell us anything new. The characters took their final bow earlier in the base camp, we don't need to see it again. Kasumi's ending slide, if anything, drags up a character arc that was supposedly resolved in Mass Effect 2. I appreciate that the extended ending cutscenes offer a little more breathing room to the final part of the ending, a chance to process and digest the final decision of the game, a little more information to help understand what Destroy, Control and Synthesis might mean. And the ending monologues are fine, I quite like those, but I think BioWare should have gone full head whack with the imagery. Instead of giving us pictures of things we already know, maybe more something like the Deus Ex Human Revolution ending cutscenes. Disconnected imagery of factories, soldiers, animals, archive footage. Something more abstract in a way that can convey the intended emotions and ideas without retreading the same ground. Remember, Shepard is altering the very nature of existence. Life and death no longer trap us in a cycle of destruction. Shepard sets the galaxy free to create its successors, to create artificial life and then to carry on. It's fundamentally different to what we've seen before and should defy all direct description. Alright, let's run through the final sequence together. One of the casualties of the pacing of the ending being off is that it's unclear where the climax is. When does the crisis come to a head? When does the central conflict actually get resolved? Is it the Thanix missiles? Is it the Conduit run? Is it the Elusive Man? Is it afterwards? Is it the whole thing? So many moments trying to be dramatic and final, it's confusing. Especially since all of those come after our epilogues for squadmates in the galaxy's factions. That's where all the jokes about Marauder Shields being the final boss of Mass Effect come from, that lack of clarity. And if we're uncertain where the climax is, then it's hard to pinpoint the falling action. At what point can we, the audience, start processing what's just happened? I think that this is where the ending really kicks off though, with Shepard's death at the hands of Harbinger. Shepard of course cannot actually die. As a fully realised hero, Shepard can cross boundaries on a whim. Reaper beams can't melt Shepard, but nonetheless we are now in a quasi-spiritual state, an extended metaphor for death and the afterlife. Having died, we hear voices beckoning us to go into the light. The conduit is our pathway to heaven. Our conflict now is metaphysical. The Reaper genocide of the galaxy is below us now, unlikely as it seems. Shepard's quest is to change the underlying fabric that causes that reality, that allows that genocide to exist. Inside the Citadel, we transition to the land of the dead, very obviously so. Our benevolent father figure, Anderson, is already inside and describes the path forward to us. Again, some fans question how this can make sense. The architecture doesn't allow for Anderson to move ahead of Shepard. As the game itself says, though, this is not a real physical space. There's a dreamlike quality to the area. It is, as said, a metaphysical realm for metaphysical conflicts, hence why Anderson and the elusive man can precede Shepard to the console.
Just gotta keep moving. It's dark. There's human remains scattered.
Sounds familiar. I'm in a dark hallway. Reminds me of your description of the collector base.
Makes sense.
You think they're making a Reaper in here?
Sure. They round them up on Earth, then send the people up here to be processed.
Goddamn abomination. I'm gonna keep moving. The sooner we blow these bastards back to hell, the better. The tubes don't go on forever. But where the hell are we?
Yeah. Doesn't look like any part of the Citadel I've been to.
Whoa.
Anderson?
One of the walls here just realigned itself. The place is shifting, changing. There's a chasm here, and more hallways like the one I was in.
I think I'm near an exit.
I see something up ahead. Might be a way to cross over.
Don't get too far ahead of me.
Where do you think you're at?
Just found that chasm we were talking about.
Hold on. I see something. A control panel, maybe. I'm just gonna go on.
Anderson! Damn it. Anderson.
Shepard! I can't!
I underestimated you, Shepard.
What?
I warned you. Control is the means to survival. Control of the Reapers, and of you, if necessary.
The Elusive Man is Shepard's second malevolent father figure. Both Anderson and the Elusive Man gave Shepard life. Anderson was Shepard's mentor and role model. The Elusive Man reconstructed Shepard from ashes. In Mass Effect 1, Anderson launches Shepard's career as a Spectre, making him a hero that can be both human and alien, both soldier and diplomat. In Mass Effect 2, the Elusive Man resurrects Shepard into an independent agent, making them a hero that can be both alive and dead, both organic and synthetic, both criminal and military. More than that, Anderson represents the image projected by Mass Effect 1, aspirational, idealistic, a paragon reality, the best the setting has to offer. The Elusive Man represents Mass Effect 2, cynical, ambiguous, a renegade reality, the darkest the setting has to offer. Both fall into the madness of Cronus. The Elusive Man is the predatory Cronus, the mad god who devours his children because of the threat they pose to him. Anderson is the sacrificial Cronus, the impotent god who's devoured by his children in turn. This is, I think, the climax of the game. This is when Shepard has the cycle of violence brought home to them, just as we saw it brought home to Samara and Thane and the Solarians and the Quarians and everyone else. Here we see what pain the problem of death can cause. The Elusive Man would kill Shepard to preserve his control of the galaxy, but that control is flawed. The Elusive Man will never be able to control the Reapers. They control him. He's ruled by his fear of death. Shepard must kill their father to avoid being killed themselves. But then we see there is a price to that as well. Shepard has killed their father. Anderson is dead. In this scene, the two characters form one father figure, one character which can both threaten to kill us and also be mourned by us as a tragic loss. We're glad to kill the Elusive Man, we're sad over the death of Anderson, but the reality is they're both the same. The tragedy isn't that the wrong dad died, it's that dad died at all.
And who will you listen to, Shepard? An old soldier stuck in his ways, only able to see the world down the barrel of a gun? And what if he's wrong? What if controlling the Reapers is the answer?
Then open the arms. Let the Crucible dock and use it to end this.
I will.
Do it.
I know it will work.
You can't, can you? They won't let you do it.
No! I'm in control! No one is telling me what to do!
Listen to yourself. You're indoctrinated.
No! No! The two of you so self-righteous. Do you think power like this comes easy? There are sacrifices.
You've sacrificed too much.
Shepard, I only wanted to protect humanity. The Crucibles can control it. I know it can. I just...
It's not too late. Let us go. We'll do the rest.
I can't do that, Commander.
Of course you can't. They own you now.
You'd undo everything I've accomplished. I won't let that happen.
You're weak and you're selfish. Because of you, humanity will suffer.
No! I saved humanity!
No. You sacrificed us for your own selfish wants. Your lust for control.
No! No!
You were supposed to protect us. And you failed.
No! I am the savior of humanity. I am the pinnacle of our species. There. Earth. I wish you could see it like I do, Shepard. It's so perfect.
This is it, everyone. The autos are opening.
Commander?
We did it.
Yes, we did. It's, quite a view.
Best seats in the house.
God. Feels like years since I just sat down.
I think you earned a rest. Anderson? Stay with me. We're almost through this.
You did good, son. You did good. I'm proud of you.
Thank you, sir. Anderson?
Shepard? Commander?
What do you need me to do?
Nothing's happening. The Crucible's not firing. It's gotta be something on your end. Commander Shepard!
I don't see... I'm not sure how to...
Commander!
Wake up.
What? Where am I?
The Citadel. It's my home.
Who are you?
I am the Catalyst.
With the truth confronted, with the last earthly tether shrugged off, Shepard is free to face God. The Catalyst is, of course, that Godhead. Some fans consider it a Deus Ex Machina because it appears at the end with no warning to tie up the plot. These people don't know what a Deus Ex Machina is. I think the internet is obsessed with the term because it's so diametrically opposed to the ideal of fiction as a secondary world. If Mass Effect is a viewing portal into a world where aliens are real, then anything that reminds us that it's actually just a story is bad. A god from the machine resolving an impossible problem is too obvious as the hand of the author setting the story aright. The Catalyst is not a god resolving an impossible problem though. It is the impossible problem, not just in the diegetic sense as a guiding intelligence for the Reapers, but also as a stand-in for God, for the creator of the universe, the architect that designed planned obsolescence into the human condition. Shepard wants to know why we die, and the Catalyst is the one responsible, symbolically or otherwise. It's not the Catalyst that provides the solution to death either, but Shepard. Shepard is the hero that has travelled through the underworld, the galaxy, and back. Shepard is the master of both realms. Shepard has proven that the old way, the cycle of life and death, won't work anymore, and Shepard's proven that, not so much to the Catalyst, but to us, the audience. We've seen the tragedy of the Krogan genophage. We've seen the pointless war over Rannoch. We've seen the daddy issues of all our squad mates. We've seen racism, deception, oppression, violence and cruelty, all born of the inevitability of death, the inherent transience of life. Shepard's solution is a radical one: to start over, overhaul the galaxy, change the very nature of existence itself so that the cycle of life and death becomes the heroic progression of life, death and rebirth. The specifics of that depend on which ending you pick. In the Destroy ending, Shepard fulfills the Titanomachy by casting down the old gods, by destroying the Reapers and their mass relay network, at least until BioWare undid that at the behest of petulant fans. But the galaxy is freed of the Reaper trap and can finally develop along new, unpredictable lines, outside of Vendetta's pattern of violence, so we hope. In the Control ending, Shepard also fulfills the Titanomachy, this time by ascending to the position of new gods, by becoming a Reaper and turning the galaxy into a Reaper society. The Reaper patterns of control still exist, but they now serve the galaxy instead of controlling it. In the Synthesis ending, presumably BioWare's intended ending as it's locked behind the highest amount of war assets, the entire conflict is ameliorated as Titans and Olympians, synthetics and organics, parents and children become one. It's the singularity, and there can't be any violence in a singularity because violence against another is violence to the self. There is no death because everyone lives in one another. But whichever ending is chosen, and there are slight differences in detail depending on things like war assets and potentially imported choices from Mass Effect 2, the result is the same. The galaxy is changed forever, it cannot stay the same. Where audiences get frustrated is that they thought the goal was to keep the galaxy the same, to preserve it from Reaper destruction. As I hope this video series has made clear though, that was never an option. Unusually for BioWare, the status quo was the problem, not the solution. The setting was flawed from the beginning, and its central conflicts demanded a new galaxy, a new paradigm, a new way of being. To return the galaxy to the way it was is to be comfortable with the Council's selfish hegemony over the galaxy. It's to be comfortable with eternal violence between the Geth and the Quarians. It's to be comfortable with Samara killing her daughter over and over again. It's to be comfortable with every injustice, every triumph of fear and greed across the settings. The stakes were always spiritual. The goal was always to make the galaxy a better place. In the end, Shepard achieves that. That's the happy ending you all claimed you wanted. Shepard ends death forever. That is what we wanted. Right?
Clearly, organics are more resourceful than we realized.
The defining characteristic of organic life is that we think for ourselves. Make our own choices. You take that away, and we might as well be machines, just like you.
You have choice, more than you know. The fact that you are standing here, the first organic ever, proves it. But it also proves my solution won't work anymore.
So now what?
We find a new solution.
Why are you telling me this? Why help me?
You have altered the variables.
What do you mean?
The Crucible changed me, created new possibilities, but I can't make them happen. If there is to be a new solution, you must act. It is now in your power to destroy us. But be warned, others will be destroyed as well. The Crucible will not discriminate. All synthetics will be targeted. Even you are partly synthetic.
What exactly will happen?
Your Crucible device appears to be largely intact. However, the effects of the blast will not be constrained to the Reapers. Technology you rely on will be affected, but those who survive should have little difficulty repairing the damage. There will still be losses, but no more than what has already been lost.
But the Reapers will be destroyed?
Yes, but the peace won't last. Soon, your children will create synthetics, and then the chaos will come back.
There has to be another way.
There is. You could instead use the energy of the Crucible to seize control of the Reapers.
So, the elusive man was right after all.
Yes, but he could never have taken control, because we already controlled him.
But I can.
You will die. You will control us, but you will lose everything you have.
How can I control the Reapers if I'm dead?
Your corporeal form will be dissolved, but your thoughts and even your memories will continue. You will no longer be organic. Your connection to your kind will be lost, though you will remain aware of their existence.
But the Reapers will obey me?
Yes. We will be yours to control and direct as you see fit. There is another solution. Synthesis.
And that is?
Add your energy to the Crucibles. The chain reaction will combine all synthetic and organic life into a new framework, a new DNA.
Explain how my energy can be added to the Crucible.
Your organic energy, the essence of who and what you are, will be broken down and then dispersed.
To do what, exactly?
The energy of the Crucible, released in this way, will alter the matrix of all organic life in the galaxy. Organics seek perfection through technology. Synthetics seek perfection through understanding. Organics will be perfected by integrating fully with synthetic technology. Synthetics, in turn, will finally have full understanding of organics. It is the ideal solution. Now that we know it is possible, it is inevitable we will reach synthesis.
Why couldn't you do it sooner?
We have tried a similar solution in the past, but it has always failed.
Why?
Because the organics were not ready. It is not something that can be forced. You are ready, and you may choose it.
I don't know.
Why not? Synthetics are already part of you. Can you imagine your life without them?
And there will be peace?
The cycle will end. The reapers will cease their harvest, and the civilizations preserved in their forms will be connected to all of us. Synthesis is the final evolution of all life. The paths are open, but you have to choose.
I am alive. All of us, synthetic and organic, have been changed. The war is over, and the Reapers are helping to rebuild. Where once they threatened us with extinction, they now bring us the collective knowledge of the cultures that came before. As a galaxy, we can now live the lives we have wished for. Taking our first steps into a new and wonderful future, where organics no longer fear their synthetic creations. With peace across the galaxy and with unlimited access to knowledge, we can eliminate disease, poverty, and overpopulation. To recover the greatness that was lost. And surpass it. We will reclaim our worlds and the stars. As the line between synthetic and organic disappears, we may transcend mortality itself. To reach a level of existence I cannot even imagine. And we will remember that this chance for a new life did not come without cost. No matter how far we advance, we will remember the sacrifices of those who made it possible. And we will remember Shepard. Because of him, I am alive. And I am not alone.
Did that all really happen?
Yes, but some of the details have been lost in time. It all happened so very long ago.
When can I go to the stars?
One day, my sweet.
What will be there?
Anything you can imagine. Our galaxy has billions of stars. Each of those stars could have many worlds. Every world could be home to a different form of life. And every life is a special story of its own.
Tell me another story about the shepherd.
It's getting late, but okay. One more story.